Hi guys, so this is my first video that I'm filming and uploading since baby boy has been here in the world. I have had a few weeks off of filming. I have filmed some like postpartum updates already. They'll be going up later on as well, probably in the next couple of weeks, and I've also done a bum progression video as well, which I think will be going up next week, depending on the order that I decide on. So do keep an eye out for those if you're interested. If you are new to my channel, you like beauty, fashion, lifestyle, mummy videos, please do hit that subscribe button on the right hand side of your screen. You just get updated every time I upload a video. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. I'd love to have your help to reach my goal. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing my labour and delivery story for you today. Now, my actual experience was a little bit tough. But I don't think of it as like a negative experience. So even if I might say things were really painful or anything like that, I still don't consider it like a bad thing. So I hope that comes across, and I don't want people to think that I'm trying to be negative about my experience, because actually I never had sort of a birth plan or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that myself and my little baby boy came to this world nice and safely, and that we will be able to recover and go home and all that sort of thing. So we never really had a particular way that I wanted him to come into the world, just as long as it was safe. So I just want to put that out there, because I know that it might sound like I'm being, that it was a bit traumatic. It was, but it wasn't a bad thing. So I just wanted to put that out there. So my labour started on the 5th of February. In the morning around 7 o'clock, I just felt a little bit off. Sort of crampy, not myself. I just thought, oh well, you know, who knows if this is labour, or if it's just like Braxton Hicks, or if it's just my body getting ready. At this stage I wasn't really thinking I was in labour. And then I went back to bed for a little bit, and then I woke up and I was still having cramps. So I started to timing them. I had like a little app, and I just timed them, and they were around every 8 minutes, and they were lasting about a minute. Sometimes it was longer, like 10 minutes in between. So they were quite sporadic at this point. And around 11 o'clock I did call the hospital just to say that I was having these contractions that were going on. I think at the time that I called the hospital, they were around every 6 to 8 minutes, lasting between 30 seconds and a minute, and they weren't very painful. Like, I could talk through them, I could, you know, do everything, I could work through them, all that sort of thing. So it wasn't painful at all at this point. And they told me that, you know, I should be really looking to come in when they're 2 to 3 minutes, and that they were a lot more painful. So I was like, okay, I'll wait it out and just see what happens throughout the day. So obviously the day progressed, and I was still having the contractions, and then they started getting stronger and stronger and stronger, as they do when you're in labour. And so I kind of knew that I wasn't in forced labour. I really did believe that it wasn't real labour right at the beginning. I just thought it's just sort of my body getting ready, that sort of thing. It's probably nothing. But as the day went on, the contractions progressed and they got more and more stronger. So my husband came back from work at around, I think he got home about 6 o'clock. I kind of just told him to stay at work as I was sort of labouring at home, because there's really nothing he could do for me. And you know, these things can take a really long time. So he came home and then he walked the dogs, which I was really, really happy that he got to do, because, you know, we obviously want to make sure that our dogs are very, very well exercised, as we were going to be leaving them for the evening for me to go to the hospital. When he got back from walking the dogs, I was sort of having contractions every sort of 2 minutes, and they were really, really strong. So I said, I think we should definitely go to the hospital now, because they are really, really hurting. And I must say, I'd been having contractions every 2 to 3 minutes for around, I'm going to say 3 hours at that point. But they weren't like super, super painful. I went into hospital when they were like really sort of getting to that strong point. Little baby boy is making noises, if you can hear him beside me. And yeah, I think I probably should have gone to hospital maybe a little bit sooner than I did. I really did wait, because I just thought it's better just the labour at home anyway. These things take a really, really long time. But I think by the time I got to the hospital, I was already in quite a lot of discomfort. The contractions were really, really strong, and they were lasting quite a long time. They were lasting around a good few minutes, and they would be really, really strong for a really long time. When I got to the hospital, they even said that. They said, oh right, I thought you'd have come in a bit sooner, as you've been having them for so long. but it didn't really matter. I was already 4 centimeters dilated when I got to hospital. They checked me out, said yes, you're definitely in labour, you're 4 centimeters, but I was still had some I don't really know what they call it. I still had some of my wall intact at that point, so I wasn't 100%. I don't know, you know the word that I'm trying to think of, but I wasn't 100% sort of open. My cervix wasn't 100%, and I was 4 centimeters dilated. So they said, that's fine, you can stay in the hospital, we will put you into your room. So I went to my room. They asked me if I wanted my epidural at that point. I said yes, because the contractions were really, really strong and they were lasting quite a long time, and they were sort of getting longer and longer and longer, which as you know, the story will go on, they kept getting longer and longer and longer. So at that point they said they don't normally give an epidural at 4 centimeters, it's normally around 6 centimeters, but because of the contraction lasting so long, they said that they would give it to me early. So this was we got to the hospital around 8:30. I went to my room. I got checked again by a different midwife. The midwife that was actually given here in Sweden didn't really speak English, which was a bit strange for me. I felt a little bit uncomfortable with that because I felt like I couldn't communicate with her. And also I had I don't know why, but they have a nurse and then you also have a trainee with you. So they're obviously training to be a midwife, and the midwife trainee that I had was a male, which I never thought would bother me, but it really bothered me, and I don't know why it bothered me at the time, but he looked really young, and obviously when they're checking me, he was just like staring at my, you know, bits and bobs, and I felt very, very uncomfortable about it. And then the contractions were getting quite strong as well, but I was sort of breathing through them. They said that the anaesthetist had been told and that they had booked me in for the epidural, so I was just waiting for my turn. At around 9:30 my husband left me and went to do the dogs again, because we only lived about 20 minutes from the hospital, so he drove back to make sure they were okay, let them out for the toilet, that sort of thing, make sure they were okay for the night time, put them to bed, that sort of thing. So but when he got back from doing that, I was having my epidural done. My contractions had got really, really strong, and they sort of made sure that I got my epidural, which was really, really interesting. I found it didn't hurt at all. I did it on my side. She did it through the contractions. So I had a contraction, she waited, then she did a bit more. There was only like the first initial bit that sort of, it wasn't painful, it was just uncomfortable. So if you're having an epidural, don't be worried about it. It really is not that bad. My husband did walk in and go, wow, that is a massive needle. I was like, don't say that, like, don't say that. I'm just having it in my back. And the anaesthetist was like, yes, don't tell her about that. But no, it was absolutely fine. I had the epidural done, and the epidural that I had was one that I could walk in, so I could still walk and move around the room and that sort of thing. So the epidural was done, which eased off my contractions. Now I could still feel my contractions, and they were still quite painful, nowhere near as painful as they were beforehand. Beforehand they were getting to a point where I couldn't actually bear them, and this sort of, when I had the epidural, I could still feel them, but I could bear that pain. And the midwife actually said to me, oh, you shouldn't be feeling it that much, it should be like hardly anything. So she was like, oh, that's, you know, maybe something's gone wrong, but anyway, it felt fine. I was fine with it. I could watch telly and that sort of thing. And around 20 minutes after I had my epidural, they told me I had to go to the toilet. They checked me, beforehand, sorry, they checked me again, and I was still 4 centimeters dilated. And after she checked me, my waters broke. I was watching telly, and suddenly I felt this massive gush of water, and yeah, then my water had broke. So they then told me I had to go to the toilet for a wee, because obviously when you had your epidural you can't really feel if you need to go to the toilet, so you kind of have to keep going regularly just to make sure. Anyway, I got up, and I don't know what happened when I went to the bathroom. First of all, I couldn't go for a wee, and also my contractions came back, and they came back with a vengeance. They came back so strong, worse than before the epidural, and they wouldn't go away. And I mean, like, normally a contraction starts, it builds up, it gets to the top where it's like really, really painful, and then it eases off, and then it stops. You have like a minute or two rest, goes back up, down, that sort of thing. These were lasting a long time, 10-15 minutes a contraction and at the top. And I was, let me just say, I was a little bit beside myself, and I think I was probably a little bit crazy. I can remember screaming a lot, which in my mind sounds now like, God, I must have been like the worst patient, because people kept trying to talk to me and I was just screaming in pain. Basically they checked me again, and then they were thinking that little Otto's hand was on his head, and they thought that he was like stuck like this, and that's why things sort of were being painful and that sort of thing. And then when they were checking me, it was really, really painful for me, and of course my contractions were really, really long. They said that my epidural or something had gone wrong with it, but the anaesthetist at the time had been seeing other patients who couldn't come back. So yes, this went on for quite a long time, and then I don't know, I can't really remember what went on, which is obviously something because I was obviously in quite a lot of discomfort and that sort of thing. But at one time there was like loads and loads of people in my room. There was doctors, there were other midwives, had a different midwife checking me, that sort of thing. And then they were trying to work out whether or not it was his head and a hand on his head that they were feeling, or if it was his bottom and that he was breech. That was kind of where we were at that point, but I was still going through these contractions that weren't going away, so I felt like I just could not communicate with anybody. I was just in that sort of screaming motion. I was holding onto the bed, and they really wanted me on my back, so they keep checking me. It was the worst position for me in regards to pain. Like if I'm in pain anyway, I always like to sort of go into like the child pose. I find that very, very comforting. But they kept pushing me onto my back, and I was just like holding onto the bed like, no, it's so uncomfortable. But yes, in the end they had to give me an ultrasound in the room, and this is at around 2 o'clock in the morning. They were like, we're going to give you an ultrasound because we can't work out what we're feeling. And basically little Otto was breech, and he's always been breech. He never turned, so when they told me he had turned, they got it wrong, and he unfortunately was breech. I was 8 centimeters dilated at this point as well, so yes, it was like a really quick thing. They were like, you're gonna have to have a cesarean, an emergency C-section, I'm afraid, because obviously, definitely with the contractions being as strong as they were, and being my first child, they didn't want me to give birth with him being breech. 1 second. Yeah, they didn't want me to give birth, obviously, with him being breech. There's just so many complications that way, and I was fine having an emergency C-section. The thing that, when they said I had to have a C-section, the thing that sort of made me cry, I did cry when they told me, and it wasn't the fact that I was having a C-section, it was the fact that they told me he had turned, because they thought he was breech at like week 30 to 34. They kept telling me he was breech, and they told me he had turned, and that was a mistake on their behalf. So I cried, because I was thinking to myself, you know, if they'd said that he was breech, I could have just had a C-section to begin with, and I wouldn't have had to go through all that pain. And the thing that I felt when I was in all that pain, because obviously they were trying to work out what they were feeling with him, and obviously more concerned about him, that they weren't that concerned that I was in so much pain, and that really kind of bothered me. But it was fine in the end. The only thing that I remembered was, because it was like a C-section, it was an emergency, they needed to get him out basically, because I was 8 centimeters already. They couldn't really wait around, so I had to have another drip put in, because the one that they'd already put in wasn't working properly. So I had so many different like drips and stuff attached to me. They then had to get me out of my clothes, because I was still in my own top and everything. I hadn't got into any sort of hospital gowns or anything, so everything decided to move really, really quickly. And I was in the hospital from 8:30, and this was at around 2, so what's that? It's like 5.5 hours to 6 hours, and this had all happened. And do you know what, time went so fast? If you think that it's going to go really slowly, it doesn't. It goes really, really fast. From basically saying that I needed a C-section to me actually being in that theatre was so fast. They basically got me ready as fast as they possibly could. They had to give me this medication, I can't remember what it was called, but to stop my contractions happening. I don't know what it was called, but anyway, they gave it to me, and to be honest, it didn't stop the contractions at all. I could still feel them. It was really, really painful. I went into theatre screaming, and they had to then give me a spinal because, you know, you're having a C-section, you've got to not be numb. Again, I wasn't allowed to move having that, and I was screaming, and the guy who was like doing the operation kept saying, you're gonna have to breathe, just breathe, just breathe, because I was trying to keep still as well as like trying not to scream. When I had the spinal done, I felt amazing. It was so bliss. The pain went away. It was fabulous. I was like, oh, it was just, everything was numb. I couldn't feel my legs. It was great. But the only thing that I would say was, because of all the adrenaline that was pumping through my body, obviously if you're going through something, you're going through labour, you're going through something that's quite scary, and also you're in quite a lot of discomfort. I was shaking. I've never shaken that much before in my life. I was like this, like not exaggerating. My entire sort of top half was shaking, and they had to give me some medicine to try and slow it down. It really didn't do too much because of how much I was shaking. Someone came in and was like, should we give us something for the shake? They're like, we already have. And they were like, oh, okay. But it was fine. The shaking didn't really bother me. It just, I felt a bit silly because I just couldn't control it. But anyway, the C-section was really, really quick. They made sure I couldn't feel anything, which I was really, really appreciative of, because I was quite concerned at that time about pain. I was like, oh my god, is it gonna hurt? I've been through enough pain right now. And they're like, no, we'll double check. They did like a clamper thing on my tummy before opening me up, and then they brought him into the world. And yes, he came into the world at 2:40 a.m. and so I was only in hospital for maybe 6 or so hours. It was really not very long. And if I had had normal contractions, and if he wasn't breech, I don't think I would have been absolutely fine. Like, the actual pain that goes up to is very, very, very strong, but if it goes up to it and then dies down, it's really fine, because you just breathe through the bad bit and then it goes away. The problem that I was having was that the contractions wouldn't stop, and I did ask, and I've asked after the birth why that happened, and unfortunately they couldn't really give me an answer as to why. They just said that some women unfortunately have that experience and they don't have normal contractions. But yeah, he came into the world at 2:40 a.m. He got given to my husband. I wasn't really allowed to hold him because I was shaking so much, so I just got to look at him. And yeah, they took him away with my husband. My husband was with him all the time, which I think was really, really nice. And the hospital was actually really good at that, keeping us together with our baby all the time, always one of us with the baby, which I just think is really, really nice, that you know that he is safe and that sort of thing. He weighed about 6 pounds 6 ounces, and it's like 3.04 kilograms, I believe, and he was 47 centimeters long, so he was quite short. I was only tiny, so I knew he wouldn't be too big. He was so tiny, and the only thing that I can remember saying was, oh my god, he is so cute. So they took him away and did all the measurements and that sort of thing while they sort of sewed me up, and got my husband to cut the umbilical cord and all that sort of thing. And at that point I was so tired, so tired. The anaesthetist was like, you can go to sleep, it's fine. So I did. I fell asleep like that. I was like, I couldn't actually keep myself awake. But before I did fall asleep, my arm, I forgot to mention, had a reaction to some sort of medicine. So this massive rash came up all across my arm, so they had to give me some sort of antihistamine to get that down as soon as possible. They also put on this really nice warm sort of air blowing machine across my chest, so it was all warm. That was really, really comforting, and I did fall asleep. Now, the thing that is a bit weird about having an emergency C-section, and I'm pretty sure with any kind of C-section, even if you're booked in for one, you have to go to recovery afterwards, and recovery is not with your baby, which is kind of strange. So I got wheeled into a different ward, and basically they wanted me to rest, and they wanted me to be able to move my legs before I went back to the maternity ward. So that was about 4 hours. I didn't go back to the maternity ward till around 6:30, 7 o'clock, I believe. So I hadn't actually held my baby or really seen him, only for that split like minute that they showed me in the theatre. But once I had actually gotten to see him, it was lovely, and I got to hold him all the time. And it was actually really nice for my husband to have that time with him as well, just sort of on their own, having a little bonding session, which, you know, was really, really nice for them. I mean, and I was so exhausted. I think that I'd have been completely useless anyway if I was there, because I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was so tired. But yeah, overall my experience seems quite dramatic. I did have throughout the last sort of few days after the birth, every time I thought about the pain that I had experienced, I started shaking again uncontrollably. Like my whole body would shake, and I think that was just like a mental it sort of really bothered me mentally rather than physically, if you know what I mean. Like physically I was absolutely fine, but the thoughts of and all the sort of feelings that I was having sort of really started that shakes again. And I did cry on the way home from the hospital just because I was scared of being in pain again, which is mad, because why would I be in pain again? But yes, it was all fine. It was quite nice. I had 2 days in the hospital. I had the Wednesday, obviously, because I'd just given birth, and then I had Thursday, and I left Friday morning. So I got really looked after, and I also got to ask a lot of questions about breastfeeding. I asked so many questions, and if I was having problems, Otto, I don't know if you just heard that, but he just did a massive fart. If I couldn't get him to latch, I just called the midwife straight away. She would help me, and I went home feeling really good about getting him latched on. And I think that's something very important to do, and not to be scared of the man handling your breasts and just sort of giving you the correct position, because you know it will just help you with any discomfort and hopefully stop your boobs hurting too much. Definitely the nipple area, because the latch is really important. But yeah, that was my labour and delivery story. I just feel that it was quite a stressful experience, however the end result was perfect. I had my baby and we were both healthy and fine, and we're home recovering, and it's been really lovely. And I really hope it didn't come across as too sort of horrible, because it wasn't that bad. The pain was really bad at the time, but in the end the results are all that matters, and I am very happy to have him in my little life. And yeah, that's gonna be it for today, isn't it? Huh? It's gonna be it for today. Basically my life now is just cuddling and breastfeeding and cuddling, which is absolutely fine. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe, like I said before, and I will see you in my next video. See you later.